Peace, 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 love, love, prosperity, abundance, self-love, self-care, wisdom, knowledge, patience, understanding, resting, standing, all the four corners of the earth, standing, and grand rising, and we are rising to the top. I love each and every one of you. I appreciate you for taking time out of your busy day, your busy schedule to watch my videos. This video is not gonna be too long. I don't want to talk. I just want to share something that I found, I came across. And so sit down and enjoy this video, okay? You can choose to agree or disagree. It's okay. We are all here to learn. All right? I love you and I appreciate you. Thank you very much. Give yourself a hug if you don't got anybody to hug you. One love.
The word Christ is a title. It's not a name. Christ means the anointed one. And there were many people before the birth of Jesus who also bore that title, Christ. There were 16 people who were known as Christ. So Jesus was the last of saviors of mankind, saviors of a group of people who were known as Christ. House of Nicaea was an effort by Constantine to control the people through military and through religion.
And if y'all don't know
Nicaea, where he brought together these theologians, these scholars, if you will, to hammer out one uniform theology that everyone would follow. And if Constantine could convince people to take Jesus as God on earth and change that he was a human being, then they could take over the control of the Catholic Church and make one. So they invited. And one of the priests...
Y'all know how I always say that Christ is consciousness, that anybody can be Christ. Jesus is a man born of a woman that led or that lived a conscious life. My name is Princess. I can be called Princess Christ. If your name is Angela, you can be called Angela Christ, Samuel Christ, Joseph Christ, Emmanuel Christ. It's a title. Okay?
Constantine could convince people to take Jesus as God on earth and change that he was a human being, then they could take over the control of the Catholic Church and make one.
Yep.
So they invited. And one of the priests was an African known as Arius. Bishop Arius. There's a book called Blacks Who Died for Jesus by Mark Hyman. Here's the story of Arius. Arius now gets word that Constantine knows Arius is coming to dispute this. Because he's saying, how are you going to tell people this? Nobody's going to believe that story. That Immaculate Conception, come on. You know, that's written on the walls of Egypt. That's a mythology. That's an analogy. You're not supposed to believe that story. That's a nice story to live by. That each and every one of us has Jesus within us, and every birth is an Immaculate Conception.
Yep.
But there was no one boy born as the Son of God to freak. Come on, you can't. Constantine said, look, come on.
I've also talked about this, that God will not kill his son for himself. God will not sacrifice Jesus for himself. It doesn't make sense. If God want to sacrifice somebody for the sins that has been committed on earth, it should have been Satan.
And each and every one of us has Jesus within us, and every birth is an Immaculate Conception.
You all have, yep.
But there was no one boy born as the Son of God to freak. Come on, you can't. Constantine said, look,
you gotta think.
Come on over here.
God is not a killer.
He found out that he was going to be assassinated. So he fled into Europe with his followers.
If anything, God would have killed
Arius
Satan.
and his followers became known as the Arians. Wouldn't Hitler have a heart attack if he was the real Arians? They were a bunch of black folk. A man named Apollonius of Tyana, at that time, who had studied philosophy in Kemet, was teaching. He was a healer, working miracles. He was a hero at that time. So he became the template for Jesus Christ.
Okay, so as you can see, I haven't uploaded.
This is the real crucifixion of Christ. All right, these are axiotonal lines in our body. Now, with that shield mutation that we just saw, it creates very specific blockages of energy lines in the body. It crucified the inner Christ, is what it did. The inner Christ grid. It crucified our ability to run D12 Maharata Christos to activate our flame bodies and our silver sanctum. So the real crucifixion story was about this. And the funny thing is, even historically, the man called Jeshua, the man who was Jesus Christ, did not die on the cross. He was not killed. He ascended. And they didn't tell anybody that because they wanted to build a martyr that people could follow and then think it was okay that they got martyred too. This was what the real crucifixion was about. And it's really sad because we've been literally walking around. The reason the story was done, the palm chakras were messed up. These became the nails in the hands, the blocked chakras in the hands. We lost our ability to run interdimensional frequency through the palms. They used to be natural. We used to be able to wave our hands and manifest things.
I'm
You
a
just make
healer.
a standing wave by doing
I
that,
use my hand.
knowing what frequency to pull. Can't do that anymore right now. They were the same thing. Feet chakra were blocked. The nails in the feet. The stab wound. There's a whole set of implant networks into here that block the spleen, which is an interface between the etheric body and the flame body levels and your physical anatomy. You have the crown of thorns, and this is about the worst one. The pineal blockages that, see the little dots? They're the ones that are blocked. They blocked literally off those currents out of the brain. Our brains literally shrunk once this was done. The brain size and function, it shut off parts of our brain. That's why science tells us, boy, we don't use very much of our brain right now. No, we don't, because it was shut off at the main switch. What we're doing as we work with healing the templates is we're opening these centers back up. And we're beginning to, now, with the Phoenix Workshop, the new information is, I have a feeling it's going to be really exciting because they're teaching us literally about having to do diagrams of brains, like correct ones, like anatomically correct, where we can see where certain things are in the brain that science doesn't know are there yet, because they're the things we're going to be activating, and you have to see how they interface directly with what parts and glands that science knows is there. But we're taking the crown off, and we're getting down off the cross, and it's about time. The Bible, holy book, it was a piece of the Emerald Covenant, CDD plate translations, the Maharata text. They took it and ran with it and made a story that wasn't even true. They tell us the crucifixion of Christ story. Christ was not crucified. We've gone through this in some of the other workshops. He was not. He ascended. Not because he died first, but because he finished his mission here and he couldn't do anything more in that time frame. And it was time.
And I repeat, nobody can take your life. When it's time for you to go, it is time for you to go. We are all here for a purpose. We are all on a journey, and we all have our time, our expiration date. When it's time for you to go, you are gonna go.
In the Great Pyramid in Giza.
You are gonna go.
And they created a story, and they made Christ a martyr. They took some of his teachings because they knew that they were loved, because he had started to bring the Emerald Covenant teachings back into the civilization at the time. They took the idea of Christ, they took the history of the man named Christ, twisted it up into the history of another man who was one of their hybrids that was supposed to get back on, bring his people back into the Emerald Covenant and didn't. And they created this whole story, this whole Jesus, Mary, and Joseph story.
Sad world.
That was agreed upon by even the competing groups. They, whatever, if they were Protestant or Catholic or whatever, it didn't matter. There was one story that was agreed upon. This particular biblical story. What do we do with what happened in the biblical times? Because for them it was a big problem. There was this guy with what they considered a big mouth who went around and he had his memory back and he talked about the Emerald Covenant and he talked about ascension and he talked about stargates and about the Templar and he talked about the times that were going to come when there was going to be a big battle between the fallen angelic races who were going to try to get the planet. These were the things that were in Revelation and stuff originally. They told us the whole story. Now they all encoded it. Now it's all encoded.
The Vatican and the 14 books removed from the Bible. If you're like most people, you probably think that the Bible has always been the same collection of books throughout history.
Nope.
However, that's not entirely true. In fact, during the early years of Christianity, there were many different versions of the Bible, each with its own set of books. Some of these books were considered canonical, meaning that they were accepted as divinely inspired and authoritative, while others were deemed apocryphal, meaning that they were rejected as false or heretical. Over time, a consensus emerged among the Christian leaders about which books should be included in the Bible, and this consensus was formalized in the 4th century at the councils of Hippo and Carthage. These councils established the canon of the Old and New Testaments as we know them today, but they also excluded several books that had been widely read and respected by early Christians. These excluded books are sometimes called the Apocrypha or the Deuterocanonical books, and they include works such as the Book of Enoch, the Gospel of Thomas, and the Apocalypse of Peter. These books offer unique perspectives on the life and teachings of Jesus, as well as on the history and theology of early Christianity. So, why were these books excluded from the Bible? Well, there are several reasons. One is that some of these books were written later than the canonical books and were therefore seen as less authoritative. Another is that some of these books contain ideas that were considered too radical or esoteric for mainstream Christianity, such